Hi everyone, this is Jonathan from TCG Grading. I thought it might be really interesting for all of us to take a step back and analyze what was graded throughout the year to provide some interesting stats, trends and patterns on all things TCG Grading. And well, what a year it's been. So 2025 saw some pretty explosive growth here at TCG Grading, where submissions averaged at around 188% growth month on month. Some months clocked in at over 300% growth based on the same time in the previous year. And that's attributed to a number of things. Obviously, we've had the political climate shape that very early on. But then also, we've also had some major decisions play out for some of the bigger global grading companies, which has provided a bit of a knock-on effect for us. But overall, there are some other things that we've done locally here that has reinforced the trust and the consistency and the service, which has meant people have come back to submit cards and booster packs on a more frequent and regular basis. But we'll get to that in a minute. So when it comes to the actual growth overview, what was really interesting was 85% of our submissions were from Australia, which again is no real surprise. But when we then started to drill down as to where the other 15% landed, 5% were from USA. And that was really encouraging for us. We're starting to see a lot more inquiries come through from the US. And when we start to ask some of our US customers and vendors, what is it about TCG Grading? There is a lot of love for the holographic label, which is great, but also the consistency in the grading. And also more recently, the custom art labels have really piqued America's interest. And so we're starting to see a lot more of that come through, which is great. We've also seen increased submissions from New Zealand and surrounds, and that continues to show steady growth in the portion of submissions. And New Zealand has always been a fantastic customer base for us, and it's one that's seen almost double in growth over the course of the year in 2025, which has been very pleasing. And then we've also had 3% from other regions. And when we drill down into where in other parts of the world we're getting submissions from, the Philippines, France, Germany, Italy are just some of the places that we're seeing a lot of submissions come through from those places in 2025. And as I mentioned before, there were some real key factors for the growth outside of the political climate and outside of some of the global grading company movements. We spent a lot of time improving and enhancing the customer service, which was really important to us. And we have a lot more to do in this space, but we've introduced quite a lot that has made us feel a lot more responsive, transparent, communicative, and open than ever before, which is great. And we thank you for providing us with that feedback. Our customer satisfaction has been consistently above 90% month on month, which has been really, really, really pleasing for the team to understand and hear. We've also spent quite a lot of time enhancing the grading methodology. So since acquiring TCG Grading, we've spent a lot of time fine-tuning, tweaking and adjusting the grading methodology to really make sure that we were able to provide grading that was consistent. And that was one of the things that we have heard the most throughout the year through our customer surveys and through just talking to people on the ground. It has been just how consistent they feel the grading is, which is absolutely incredible for us, and that really ties into having more training and experienced graders on the ground. So 2025 was the year that we actually saw TCG Grading recruit the most full-time, part-time and casual staff in its history. And that's to really signify that we're here for the long haul, but that we're committed to providing experienced graders that can deliver consistent and transparent grading for anyone that submits anything into the future. And this one's really important to us. My personal belief is that technology and AI should enhance and should accompany a human based grader, but it shouldn't replace it. I don't think that we're quite there yet. And I kind of liken it to a pilot relying on AI and technology to fly a plane, or a surgeon relying on technology and AI to perform a successful medical procedure. Those things really can't be fully replaced by technology just yet. And I feel that, while grading is almost there, it's not quite there. And I think there are some things that we've found through our human grading that the technology hasn't quite picked up on. And so really making sure that we're complementing the technology, the AI, with the human-based interaction, we feel is the best recipe for consistent and high quality grading into the future. We've also improved our communication. We know that we can do a lot better as well. This is one of my biggest priorities going into 2026, which is how we can improve the status updates, the member portal, how we can improve our response times to when people send through DMs and emails, to make sure that it's the best communication that people get from TCG Grading moving forward. We've also introduced subgrades since taking on TCG Grading, which people love. And in 2026, you'll also be able to see some of the graders notes as well, which is really exciting for us to be able to introduce, all for the same submission price, of course. And also creating that serial database lookup. That was really important for people to see and have. It's kind of a basic, and we were really happy to have implemented that at the beginning of the year. Also, one of the key things that I was really passionate about, and still am, is just having more visibility among vendors and at exhibitions and conferences. So 2025 saw TCG Grading attend over 18 different exhibitions and conferences. We have record numbers of vendors and influencers wanting to come up and sign up to do all things TCG Grading, which is great. And we're very pleased to announce that in 2026, we're the major grading partner for Collect Fest across the country. And we're also the major grading partner for Oz National, as well as attending a record number of shows again in 2026, because we know that being there in person, talking through, providing grading advice, but also helping people with their submission is really important to that overall grading experience. And so now if we head into the numbers, and if we start off with our biggest portion of the submissions, which is Pokemon. So Pokemon dominated. 75% of all cards and packs graded in 2025 were Pokemon. Overwhelming popularity in the TCG market, obviously fueled by some of the other global factors that have been fueling Pokemon over the last 18 months. And certainly going into its birthday year next year means that for us, Pokemon is not slowing down at all. And what was really interesting was that when we broke down Pokemon, 30% of all submissions were actually Japanese cards. So we saw quite a lot of international cards come through TCG Grading, 30% Japanese, and we also saw a very sharp rise in Chinese, Indonesian, and Korean cards as well, followed by Italian and German. But certainly when it comes to Pokemon International, the Asia Pacific Pokemon lines definitely dominated that international scene. And it's of course no surprise there in terms of having some of those Japanese cards at super high value, high quality. It makes sense that people want them graded. We also saw a record number of high value cards come through. So we saw quite a lot of Ponchos come through, Umbreons. We saw a couple of those high value Charizards that were 3K plus come through, not to mention a couple of first edition Charizards amongst other first edition cards. But the Charizard's our favorite, coming in at a TCG 8, which sort of puts it at anywhere between $20,000 to $30,000. So we were really, really excited just to look back and just see at how many high value cards and sets we've been able to grade over the course of the year. When it comes to our next biggest grading line, we're looking at sports. And sports accounted for 14% of the total cards and packs that were graded by TCG Grading in 2025. And the top brands, no surprise, Panini and Select AFL, NRL, a lot of cards were graded across those brand lines. And then when we broke down the actual sports into sports genre, NBA dominated the actual sports grading scene, with the majority of sports submissions being made up by NBA, followed by UFC, and then AFL, NRL, and then we had a bit of soccer, we had a bit of NFL, NHL, and then NBL. So what was really interesting was in 2025, we saw a sharp increase in NBL and baseball related cards come through. And we were very lucky and blessed to have been in a very fortunate position of being able to assist some high value collectors in grading and authenticating cards that were as vintage as 1935 to 1965. And for us to hold these cards was incredible for us, and it was a truly fantastic experience for the graders to have gone through that. Certainly, one of the next key grading lines is One Piece. And One Piece, while it accounts for 4% of the grading overall, that may seem like a small number, but you need to remember that that's 4% of thousands and thousands and thousands of cards and packs that we've received throughout the year. And it's one of the lines that has the sharpest increase. So in 2024, we approximate One Piece was about 1 to 1.3%. And now in 2025, it's skyrocketed to 4%. And certainly we can see that in the market as well, and how the market has slightly shifted in the last 6 months to people wanting to get into One Piece a little bit more. And that's what we're certainly seeing in TCG Grading. One of the other things that we're actually very curious about is just what does the high submission quality look like, and how does it impact the overall market value? One of the things that we know is that One Piece cards are generally printed to a very high standard, which means that nearly half of all cards achieved a gem mint or flawless 10 grade. So what this tells us is that we have a highly engaged collector base which understands the importance of condition and presentation. We also have a manufacturer and TCG line that also understands the importance of condition and presentation. So how the overall condition and quality of the card will impact the market value remains to be seen in the long term. Certainly we know that with Pokemon, with some of the English lines in particular, where some of the printing isn't so good, like in the 2021 Celebrations line, where you have anything from a 7 to a 9.5 valued in 2 digits, and then a 10 in the thousands, purely because of the actual printing quality. We may not see that in One Piece. We may not see some of those wild swings in market pricing because of the quality mapped to the grading as, say, in Pokemon. So it'll be really interesting to see just how that sort of pans out with the market moving forward. Almost half of all One Piece submissions were also alt art variants, secret rares, which again really sort of reinforced this whole concept of, One Piece being very value focused and value driven. We also saw a lot of preference for unique and rare cards, which was absolutely fantastic to see. I mean, we had quite a lot of high value cards come through. Again, One Piece, which was really, really pleasing to see. We then go into the next category, which is Dragon Ball, and Dragon Ball accounted for 3% of cards that were graded at TCG overall. And when we actually break that down, again, a significant portion of Dragon Ball submissions achieve high grades, but again, that is because we have Dragon Ball printed to a very high quality, to a very high standard. So similar to One Piece, it'd be interesting to see just how Dragon Ball lands over the long term as we continue to watch and monitor some of the values of some of these mid to high end cards that are in that gem mint and flawless 10 stratosphere. And certainly when it comes to dominated what key characteristics dominated Dragon Ball, Son Goku, Vegeta led the way in popularity. Frieza further enriched the collector experience there. So we did have quite a few of those common characters come up through some of the Dragon Ball that we've been grading there too. We then had Yu-Gi-Oh! And Yu-Gi-Oh! Accounted for 1.89% of all cards graded. So this was a mix of modern release, Japanese, and legacy cards. And so what we see in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is actually quite a lot of people wanting to grade their childhood cards, wanting to grade cards that were played either lightly or heavily, because they purely just wanted them encapsulated, because they held some type of value, nostalgic or otherwise. And so that's where we saw the actual grade bell curve to be in the low sort of to mid eights as a bit of an average for the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Yu-Gi-Oh was also the line that we saw the highest number of cards that we couldn't authenticate outside of Pokemon. So we had a lot of, and I hate to use the F word, but fakes. We had a lot of cards that just failed the authentication process more than any other TCG line, which again was very interesting for us to see, but also no surprise given that a lot of the cards that were submitted seemed to be from childhood collections that people were holding onto. Some of those iconic cards that we saw time and time again, Blue Eye, White Dragon, Dark Magician Girl, these really emphasized the status as the cornerstone pieces in the Yu-Gi-Oh market, and just how their popularity really endures over time there as well. And so in terms of that final breakdown, so this is where you can see what that final breakdown looks like across the distribution of the cards overall for 2025. It'll be really interesting to see just how this all changes into the new year. And so one of the things that we want to sort of, really focus on is obviously Pokemon has evolved into a significant force within the trading card ecosystem. And this is what's really exciting about us being able to do this analysis. And with your feedback, if you found this useful, please tell us, because we'd love to be able to do this every 6 to 12 months and provide some data and some analytics on what we're seeing on the ground here. But one of the things that is really sticking out to me is while Pokemon is one of the cornerstones, and certainly at 75%, it dominates. One of the key things to remember is that it also underlines the need for collectors and collector investors to really adopt diversified strategies that encompass a variety of card lines to maximize potential returns and reduce risk. So while your collectible portfolio, whether it's for investment or for personal use, might carry the bulk in Pokemon, now I think is a timely reminder for people to start to think about what are some of those other TCG lines that they might be interested in, to learn about, to collect, invest. But certainly some of the things that we're seeing at the moment with how the Pokemon market is shifting, and what we're seeing through some of the grade distributions as well, just makes me wonder about just how much discussions are happening around diversification in collectibles and the diversification approach to how people are looking at building their collections, either for personal use or for investment purposes. And certainly there's a bit of a fun element there as well in learning about other TCG lines, but certainly it's something to sort of think about going into 2026. And I'd love people's feedback on how they've diversified or how they've thought about not putting all of their collectible eggs into one basket, so to speak. And so, look, I just wanted to really thank you all again for supporting TCG Grading through 2025. It's been about 18 months since I've taken it on, and I haven't looked back. We have a whole lot more planned for 2026. We have some really exciting innovations that I'll keep just under the hat for now. But over and above that, we're launching the Funko Pop grading, the video game grading. We'll also have grading consultations where you'll be able to dial into Zoom calls with your grader, and they'll be able to talk you through, much more valuable than just seeing some random report online with some scans and photos. You'll actually be able to talk to your grader if you wanted to select that option. Custom art labels, our artist in residence, Kai Christian. Kai is extremely popular right now, with us having over 300 cards since its launch only 3.5 weeks ago for custom art labels. So custom art is definitely here to stay, and it's something that will get bigger and better in 2026, as well as jumbo cards, amongst some other things there as well. So I really wanted to thank you again. Thank you again to all of our repeat customers for your loyalty and for your support. I really appreciate it on behalf of the team. And if you haven't tried us out yet, please try us out. And as always, please take care, look after yourselves, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on the things that we've walked through today.